And let's switch gears to the conversation of the day. And I have a woman in leadership with me in studio. Her name, Ambassador Carla Mukavi. She's a country representative to Kenya Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, that is FAO. And of course, the conversation here is the effects of climate change on agriculture. But before we get to talking about agriculture, your comments on the all-women team that are making us so proud.
Thank you, Gladys. Congratulations to the team, to the women team. Actually, this is so encouraging. So I would say that it speaks a lot to women in science, which is an area that really I would say that women were not really embracing, were not up to. And to see those amazing results and the impact that will really have in our society, women in particular, is really something to congratulate the women and say that women in leadership can really transform societies.
Excellent. Well said. And we look forward to many more. Now, let's take a look at the conversation of the day. And we have said we are looking at the effects of climate change in agriculture. Of course, the country is going to the 7th Devolution Conference, which starts tomorrow all the way to the 26th of November. And the theme is multi-level governance for climate change. The sub-theme is actually sub-national mobilization in unlocking the full potential of climate action during and after pandemics, which means that as a country, we see the importance of prioritizing and mitigating the impact of climate change. And this comes, of course, just a few days after the Glasgow conference, where the world over sat down to see how best we can mitigate the same. So, as I mentioned, a huge conference in Glasgow just the other day. Why is it critical, Ambassador, for countries to prioritize curbing the effects of climate change, especially in the agriculture sector?
Yeah, thank you very much again, Gladys, and good morning, viewers. I really want to thank NTV for the opportunity of inviting FAO for this very important conversation. And let me say that as we are really heading to the 7th annual Devolution Conference, I really want to congratulate the county's government through the COG and also the steering committee for really convening this important devolution conference. We know the challenges that they face with several postponements because of COVID-19, but we are really glad that this is going to happen, and congratulations. And it's also really in this conversation to recognize the gains really of the decentralization process in Kenya through devolution that has really transformed the lives of many. I should really say that, of course, more should be done, but let's really cherish and recognize those gains so that no one is left behind. As you really rightly said, the theme of the Devolution Conference is multi-level governance for climate action. And this is a theme that really resonates so well with the FAO agenda, because really our agenda places climate change on top of our priorities, our strategic framework, our program of work really look at climate change as one of the priority so that we can really deliver on our mandate. That is really ensuring food security and nutrition, that everyone, everywhere has access to enough food that is affordable, that is accessible, that is safe, that is also nutritious, so that they can really lead a healthy and active life. As you said, and you know, actually agriculture is really impacted in so many ways by climate change. But at the same time, agriculture can contribute to mitigation and adaptation to climate change. So therefore, we as a FAO will look at the conference as really a unique opportunity for Kenyans to deliberate on the challenges of climate change. This will allow also all participants, coming from different angles, really to deepen this understanding. We are coming from Glasgow, as you say, commitments were made. We have to transition for the green economy to really minimize the impact. And the conference will also galvanize support and action, in order really to make sure that we implement the decisions that we have been taking. It will also give the opportunity, surely, to strengthen partnerships, share really successful stories, inspiring stories, because are there, so that we can really upscale and of course identify really potential solutions to address this threat that unfortunately affect every aspect of our life. So let me say that our message is really a message of hope, a message of encouragement, and also a message of really continuing to support so that we ensure that really food security and nutrition is attained, and that we should all come together and take action in order to tackle climate change, in order to save lives, save livelihoods, and save the planet, I should say.
All right. And just as I mentioned, and you keep mentioning, from the just concluded COP26, I think it's important for the layman to just put it out there and clarify, what is this climate change we talk about and what is causing it in the first place?
Unfortunately, when we look at it, and this is what the scientists are saying, it's really human activities. We look at the fossil fuel. If I come to agriculture, we also know that, of course, using a lot of water, it can really impact on it. When we talk about, of course, exploitation of coal, which really contribute to those gas emissions that will, of course, hit the atmosphere. And the impact is what we really see. Droughts, floods, just to mention desert locusts, more frequency and more prolonged, of course, adversities, such as the ones that I just mentioned. So, which means that we have to take action in order to mitigate and to adapt to climate change. We have to, I want to go back, I was here some times ago when we commemorated the World Food Day, and the theme was our actions are our future. So we really have to be responsible on our actions so that we really build a better future for our children, for the future generations, and even for ourselves.
Okay, now, Ambassador, you say there's a lot of hope going into the 7th Devolution Conference, especially now that we see the country is prioritizing climate change and, of course, looking into how they can actually action to mitigate the same. Now, going back to the COP26, interestingly, and I'm sure you caught this, countries like Benin, Burkina Faso, and Cameroon agreed to sign on reducing the methane emissions you're talking about in the air. But interestingly, Angola, Uganda, and Kenya did not. Is this a concern for you?
Well, we have to look at the time that, of course, surely they will head there, because this is a commitment that we all have really to take. I'm sure that those countries like Kenya and the ones that you mentioned, Angola and so on, maybe they are really taking the time to really analyze, make sure that the consultations really take place. But I see that the trend is really taking that action because it's really needed if we really want to invert the trend of action.
And when you talk about this methane emission, how does that directly impact on agriculture?
Of course, we talk about, for instance, I will go to livestock. This is a country, I would say, Kenya, that livestock is really one of the, I would say, really essential area. When, again, I will really go back to the impact of climate change. Right now, Kenya and the Eastern African region is really faced with a severe drought that is impacting, particularly here in Kenya, the Asal counties. We are now talking about around 2.5 million of people that are really affected by drought, and they are really in the edge of food insecurity. And most of them are really the pastoral and agro-pastoral communities And we know that if we not really manage well the wastes, this can contribute to that gas emission that again will really impact on agriculture. So what is really needed here is really a good management of the wastes that are really produced by our, of course, livestock, because this is where, of course, methane comes from. So I should say that management, a good management, it's really important, and it's really possible to act in a very responsible way so that we reach, of course, that management that is required.
And it's interesting because the areas you touch on, there are still areas that are hard hit by the impact of climate change. You would say this has been perennial, years in, years out. We see this, but it seems to be getting worse with time. But then again, this is happening in the face of a pandemic. How has that come to perhaps intensify the situation, so to speak?
It's because, of course, we I would say, we continue to pollute. We continue to really do those things that contribute to this gas emission. And then if I talk about, of course, Kenya as such, and you rightly mentioned, we see, of course, a very low average of rainfalls. And this has been really happening, for instance, for the 3 consecutive seasons. And of course, lack of rains, it means that, of course, not able to produce. The ASAL countries that are already so vulnerable, this is really impacting on pastoral and pastoral communities. Of course, and this has been exacerbated by the desert locust invasion. There were 2 waves that invaded Kenya, and you rightly said, you know, the impact of COVID-19. So although, of course, you know, the communities and the counties at the national level and at also county level, they are doing their utmost through, of course, the resilience building that they've been putting through the programs, but the vulnerability is so intense because of these layers of adversities that really turn the situation more and more challenging.
Okay, and as we go into the devolution conference, as you say, every county carries its own burden, depending on how hard hit it has experienced the impact of climate change. Food security is #1 on that list for most of these counties. How can we turn the tide, so to speak?
Of course, we have to make sure that we produce in a sustainable way. I would say we have to look, for instance, at the initiatives and programs such as climate smart agriculture, through which we do, of course, techniques and technologies. You can even really produce, when I say in a sustainable way, in a limited portion of land, but you increase production and productivity. And when I look at the techniques, for instance, the technologies, you have got small-scale irrigation and using irrigation also in a very manageable way so that you don't really use a lot of water, but technologies will allow it in order to use the techniques that allow you to produce in a scale, but also minimize the impact. And of course, I should say that working very closely with the county governments, working very closely with the national government, our country program framework, through which, of course, we support the government of Kenya to attain the 100% food security and nutrition. That is one of the pillars of the Big Four agenda. We make sure that how we implement it, we really bring that building resilience that is really needed, creating that capacity, transferring the knowledge, so that really agriculture and agri-food systems are really transformative, are really resilient, are really inclusive, and are also sustainable.
Speaking about sustainability and, of course, resilience, let's go back to the Asol region. They don't have an advantage like some regions of this country. So it's a drought area. There's less water. There are lesser trees and all that. In your framework, are they a priority region, and how do you take care of this kind of need, what they have to do to ensure that they stay afloat?
Again, sustainability is really key. Building resilience is really very important. When you look at some of course, we have been really supporting the emergency assistance because of the drought that is really impacting the Asal counties and mostly the pastoral and agro-pastoral communities that really form the majority of the communities there. We have been, for instance, as FAO, and I should say that as UN Family, we have launched the flash appeal under the coordination of the resident coordinator in order really to assist the immediate needs that we see coming, of course, from the severe drought. But I should say that this is not enough, and it's really important that we really build that resilience that is really needed in order to minimize the impact. And this means really strengthening, of course, the institutions. We have been working very closely, for instance, with the NDMA, the National Drought Management Authority. We know, for instance, that the early warning systems and the actions are really allowing to project and to give the accurate information that allow us to know that, of course, here the danger is coming so that we can act in anticipation. And here I really wanted to also bring one important component, which is anticipatory action. It's really very important and is less costly to act in advance. Right to go, of course, right to your question, we also have to look at the diversification of the economies. Of course, we are looking at agro-pastoral and pastoral communities, but it's really important to bring, for instance, many other activities like really beekeeping, the poultry, so that, of course, the communities, they can really stand in moments of shock.
Yeah, very well said. And speaking about working with what we have, recent seasons have seen us deal with an influx of water in form of floods, and now we're experiencing the extreme, which is drought. Is there a way we can strategically rethink how we perhaps use our natural resources in the wake of erratic seasons?
Yeah, actually, I should really say that one of the components of our counter program framework, again, that really supported again the Kenyan government to attain food security and nutrition is building resilience, building resilient systems. And I should say that there we are really working particularly with the communities in forest conservation. There are so many examples that are really showing that, let's say, the communities are really adopting to it. They understand that really doing the activities in a sustainable way, this could really give them some gains. For instance, in Kirisia Forest, where most of the communities were living inside the forest, and I would say that this was really degrading, where they understood that really coming out of the forest could really regenerate the forest and give them, let's say, the support that they would really, of course, use to increase their living standards. They adopted. So to say that I go back to the importance and to the need to work very closely with the communities to have the right policies, and this is how we are working together at the national and the county level, because right policies, they create that enabling environment that, of course, attract, of course, resources, private sector and other stakeholders to come together so that we can together really, of course, channel our intervention to the transformation of agri-food systems and to the benefits of the community at large.
All right. You touched on the importance of using technology and also not being reactionary. And in this case, desert locusts have really terrorized some of the regions in this country and really impacted on the farmers' crop yield and by extension their sources of income. Is there room for tech and innovation perhaps to mitigate the impact of some of these eventualities we're seeing today?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Technologies and innovation can really transform agri-food systems. And we have seen in different projects that we have been really implementing. Let me just bring one of them, which is KIAMIS, the Kenya Integrated Agriculture Management System, that allow, for instance, to have the farmers registered so that you know where they are, who they are. And then in this sense, we have really built different models to provide the assistance and the inputs that they need. And this is really also a game changer and very transformative. But there are many others. Really, digitalization can also attract young people. We have been saying that agriculture really has the opportunity of creating jobs, you know, from really farm to fork, the whole value chain from transportation to packaging to distribution. So it's a range of opportunities that can really be enhanced in order to absorb young people and to have young people really embrace agriculture. Actually, we just came also from the Food System Summit, which here in Kenya was really organized through different national dialogues that took place in different regional blocks. And we saw the issues that really came out from this very interactive dialogue. Issues of nutrition. Nutrition is also of concern. Talking about the drought in the South countries, the kids under 5, they are really the ones to feel, particularly when the livestock is not producing. Actually, I was saying that one of the support that we are providing is really the feed for livestock with cube ranges. That is a very special formulation that allow the cows to continue producing, although a little bit weak. And if you really provide that in a very few days, even those cows that have lost their weight, they can really quickly recover. So I was bringing the issue of nutrition that came out from very, very strongly that we have to improve nutrition, particularly for young kids. So milk is very, very crucial. That's why it's important that, you know, when we support the pastoral and agro-pastoral communities, we take this into attention because it's really going to impact on kids, but also I would say really elderly and of course sick people. The vulnerability, it's acute in situations of drought and food insecurity. I also wanted to say, so come back to digitalization and technologies, which also came very strongly from the National Dialogues on Food System Summit, where again it can really transform agriculture because you are really using tools, you are using really new techniques that, of course, mitigate and contribute to adapt to climate change, and at the same time is really even less the burden, for instance, of women. I was talking about the Smart Climate Agriculture, which is another initiative, of course, in implementing, again, the national, of course, strategy on climate smart agriculture. We're implementing in some of the counties, targeting women, and they really have embraced it, and we can really start seeing some results. And we know that, of course, women are the backbone of agriculture, the majority in terms of labor, and they need support. Actually, one of the reports of FAO indicates that if we give the input and the services to women that they need, the level of production could really increase in 20%, and how transformative this could be, and the contribution really to ensure food security and nutrition.
All right. So even as we get to understand the impact of climate change in agriculture, let's switch gears a little bit and take this story where the villages of Nabiswa, Nisianda and Chwele in Bungoma County have been witnessing rising cases of people with abnormal growths or tumors. Now, this has contributed to high levels of stigma, with some attributing the tumors to witchcraft. But a nurse from Webuye Hospital has been using her free time to sensitize community members on this condition, besides linking the affected people to relevant specialized medication. Our reporter Gabriel Kudaka visited these villages and brings us their tales.
Sibumba Secondary School in Chwele, Bungoma County. Form 3 students pay attention as their teacher takes them through a chemistry lesson. Sharon Mutoro stands out from her class due to this growth.
Kuna shida imenisumbua kwa miaka mingi sana. Nimesumbua katika hospitali kutafuta matibabu.
What began as simple pimple after her birth is one of her major nightmares. Her classmates have been giving her moral support as she battles this growth.
Kuna mwalimu atafunza, unajua walimu amefunza labda hajaelewa vizuri. Tuna making sure that tumemweka in a position that yeye pia understand vizuri. Tunamuongelesha kwa lugha yetu kama watu wa rika moja.
A few kilometers from Sharon's school, we meet Jamin Kipanga and his wife Bridget Namwenya tending their livestock. Nothing seems out of the ordinary from the surface, but a bit of inquiry reveals a dark, painful past that threatened their union.
Hata mtu akimuona alikuwa hata atataka atavike tu, nikasema tu hata atali aende tu.
Their neighbor Joyce Aliviza also battled with the tumor for more than 15 years, but has lived to see better days after undergoing successful surgery.
Nilikuwa ninauza mboga yangu, nikienda deni watu wanaanza kunitusi kwa juu ya ugonjwa, na utaniambia nini huko na ugonjwa kama nini, shingo kama ya kuku. Ninaanza kulia, hata siku hiyo siwezi kukula. 2018 ndio nilitibiwa.
These are not the only cases of abnormal growths in this area. There are more than 50 such cases in the neighboring villages of Nasianda and Nabiswa in Tongaren, Bungoma County. Some attribute the condition to witchcraft.
Wengi walikuwa wanasema ni uchawi, lakini haikuwa uchawi. Ilikuwa tu ugonjwa wa liboma.
Mtu akiwa mgonjwa lazima apitie kwa waganga wa kienyeji kwanza.
An increase in these cases and the stigma that is attached to it prompted a nurse at Webuye County Hospital to start sensitizing the community and linking some of them with necessary facilities for treatment. Florence Wabomba does this during her off days.
Unapata kwamba chronic illnesses na non-communicable diseases wanakuwa na mauvimbe na wamemea magrowth, alafu mtu amekaa na hizo shida karibu miaka 6, miaka 10, na anapoenda katika hospitali anaelekezwa, anaambiwa pengine enda Eldoret, enda wapi, na wengi hawajui hata Eldoret, wanashindwa sasa, wanarudi wanakaa kama nyumbani.
Are some of the challenges facing people with tumors, but efforts by this health service provider has begun to bear fruit.
Kwa hiyo miaka 13 nilikuwa tu surangini.
Through efforts by Nurse Florence, over 100 patients from Tongaren sub-county have so far undergone successful corrective surgery, with some still optimistic of getting treatment.
To the partners who come to support the county in health, we share the photos, and then you find the partner speaking a case to support. So the person will pick the case from the ones I have, the ones that will be touching, the case will be picked, and then from there we start. So now where we are going to link now, the partners will pay the money to the hospital, I get the bill, they send the money through the pay bill number.
The challenge that we're having as a facility, as a community, in that we're having our clients coming in late for treatment.
Thanks to Florence, the patients have been able to access different health facilities for the support they need. Gabriel Kudaka, NTV.
Back in studio, and to that conversation of the day, the effects of climate change in agriculture, still with Ambassador Carlo Mukavi, who is a country representative to Kenya Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, abbreviated as FAO. And even as we go into this 7th Devolution Conference, I think of great importance is to appreciate the fact that financing climate action is an integral part or pillar in supporting climate action. How can governments of the day ensure that they address this adequately?
There is no doubt resources are really needed in order to adapt and to put in action really those initiatives, programs, and really projects that can contribute to that. So therefore, of course, we saw from Glasgow that the commitment is there. It's really very important that, of course, those funds are really provided, particularly for developing countries that are really in so much need of it in order to adapt. We see really the consequences to the vulnerable community. And of course, it's really important that we adopt the right policies are really needed to put in place that really environment, working very closely with the communities and all stakeholders in order really to make sure that we change. We change the way we do things, the mindset. It's really very important. And of course, internally, also budgeting those activities are really very important because it's really to budget, integrating them in the national plans is really key so that they are budgeted. So, of course, at the end of the day, they are really implemented in the right way. When I talk about, of course, changing the mindset, I really wanted to bring another very important initiative here, the 4K clubs that really work with small kids. Yeah. And we already see some schools, the curricula integrating, of course, how to really do agriculture in a very sustainable. And then we see the kids really embracing that, and I'm sure that this is really going to transform because climate change is really part of this. So I'm really very hopeful, but really to rightly respond to your question, I think it's important to integrate really those issues in the national, of course, plans and the budgeting, while at the same time, of course, the international community has this responsibility also really to support developing countries. We need resources. This is costly and they will be really needed.
Perhaps you can underline those priority areas where they need to really be given a boost with financing.
Of course, agriculture being one of them. This is the FAO mandate, so I will look at that. I was saying that really is impacted by so many ways on climate change. We see what is happening in the south. We see the land degradation, really reduction of production and productivity. So all those really new techniques, really bringing technologies, digitalization is really key. But of course, I will talk about so many other. I'm focusing on agriculture
yes.
because this is my area. But of course, we saw what comes from Glaxo. We really have to integrate. This is cross-cutting. Is multi-sectorial. You cannot point, just one. So it's an action that really requires a very holistic approach, so that, of course, we channel our intervention and our actions to those areas that we know that they are mostly impacted, so that, of course, we can really mitigate and particularly adapt to climate change. So, again, enhancing institutional capacities and, of course, enhancing really community capacity so that, of course, they are more responsible and they know how to adapt. It's key. But I would say that is all cross-cutting, multi-sectorial, and it really requires a very holistic approach.
All right. So even as we go to the 7th Devolution Conference, which you will be in attendance, what message are you carrying to the conference?
The message of hope, again, encouragement, continuous support that FAO will continue to be standing behind, recognize the leadership of the counties and the national government in this, so of course the right policies. So it's really a message of hope and encouragement, and wishing really a very successful conference. I see it's really an opportunity to come together, to take action, and to implement the decisions that we have been taking. And for that, let me also take this opportunity to thank the donors that have been supporting programs and projects that we have been implementing together with the government. And I'm sure they hear us, and of course, surely I know that they will continue to also to be supporting, so that we can be meaningful.
Very well said. Well, Ambassador Carla Mukavi, who is the country representative to Kenya Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, abbreviated as FAO, thank you for your time. And of course, this conversation comes ahead of the 7th Annual Devolution Conference that will start tomorrow all the way to the 26th of November. As I mentioned, the theme is very integral because it focuses on the impact of climate change and the fact that we are putting forth our best foot forward to actually action what needs to be done to mitigate the same. Well, at this point, we take another short break here on Your World. When we return, we continue on the impact of climate change, but this time we focus on the fisheries industry. Remember, yesterday was actually the World Fisheries Day. So how does it look like in that sector? We'll find out more in a moment. Stay with us.